All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, Joe Biden is headed to Kenosha today for a community meeting as that city tries to repair and to heal. He now appears to have switched gears in his campaign, traveling, doing events here as we enter the home stretch of the campaign. Here's how Biden explained his reasons for the trip in an event yesterday.
There's been overwhelming requests that I do come because what we want to do is we got to heal. We got to put things together, bring people together. And so my purpose in going will be to do just that, to be a positive influence on what's going on, talk about what need be done, and try to see if there's a beginning of a mechanism to bring the folks together. We have to heal. This is about making sure that we move forward. And so I've gotten advice from sitting members of the Congress and the Senate as well to go, and that I should go. I'm not going to do anything other than meet with and meetings with community leaders, as well as business people and other folks in law enforcement, and to see start to talk about what has to be done. I'm not going to tell Kenosha what they have to do, but we have to do together.
Now, coming out of the RNC with unrest on the streets of Kenosha and also Portland, Oregon, many a pundit presumed that Trump could benefit from that chaos. And I get it, to be honest with you. Through the 70s, 80s, and somewhat in the 90s, crime was a good issue for Republicans and a bad one for Democrats. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan won the presidency in part on racial tough-on-crime messages during a time of rising crime in America. This is the era in which Joe Biden's political identity was actually formed, and he leaned into it, successfully appealing to Delaware's white working class by opposing integration efforts, backing Bill Clinton's efforts to end welfare as we know it, and leading the way on draconian tough-on-crime measures that came to be codified as the Biden crime bill. That bill, of course, doomed a generation of poor and mostly black men to incarceration, a legacy that we are reckoning with in real time. In my opinion, it's a shameful record. But it's also a record that makes him maybe the worst possible Democrat to try to Antifa. Joe Biden's entire career has basically been a Sister Souljah moment. The Trump campaign has already spent millions trying to paint Joe as a handmaiden, a Marxist, cribbing his policy white papers from in defense of looting. Let's be clear. There's zero sign that this absurd caricature is landing with the electorate, and there's absolutely no reason to expect that more unrest in the streets would change that. All Biden had to do to rebut it was say this.
You know me. You know my heart. You know my story, my family story. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really?
In fact, you don't have to take my word for it. We got enough new polling to draw some very clear conclusions here. First of all, we've got a whole lot of post-convention, post-Kenosha, post-Portland polling. We're going to dig into all of that today in the show. And while there are outliers, the overall picture looks pretty good for Biden. So the idea that some localized unrest was going to turn this race on its head seems far-fetched at this point, to say the least. Coming out of the RNC, this should be the high watermark for the Trump campaign. If they're still down 7, with the number of undecideds vanishingly small, and the national discussion centered on the issues that they believe to be to their benefit, doesn't seem like a place you really want to be. Second, while Trump and the Republicans are desperately trying to make the election about crime and about unrest, for most Americans, that is just not even close to their top priority. In fact, in a new Economist YouGov poll, only 5% of respondents said that crime was their top issue. That puts it below healthcare, the economy, climate, civil rights, immigration, taxes, national security, and education. And as Sagar is covering today, coronavirus is still the overwhelming top concern for Americans who quite rationally see it as much more of a real threat to their lives than some theoretical Antifa mob led by Joe Biden coming to their town. But let's say that the election does end up revolving around the issue of national unrest and which candidate would handle it best. Not only do I not think that this would hurt Biden, according to the data, it could actually benefit him. Here's why. Politico Morning Consult asked voters who they trust more in public safety, and guess who came out on top? Joseph Robinette Biden, because of course he did. He beats Trump on the issue 47-39. And then there's also this. A majority of Americans, 56%, said that they believe violence will get worse if Trump is reelected. A majority. While a plurality, 43%, said it would get better if Biden is elected. Only 18% said that the violence would get better if Trump is reelected. Because that notion makes absolutely zero sense. In fact, you could actually say that Biden's entire campaign was kind of built for exactly this type of moment. The first ad that he ran in the primary was about what? Charlottesville. It was about unrest in American streets and Trump's inability to bring us together and unwillingness to condemn bad actors who happen to be his supporters. Now, I personally think Biden would be better off focusing on the issues that people really do say are their top issues, like healthcare and the economy. But as Terry McAuliffe, someone I don't always agree with, told the New York Times, everyone knows we need healing, and that is a strong suit for Biden. It's a mistake for Trump, but he doesn't have much to run on. Biden's core and persistent return to normalcy message is well suited to this moment, whether it's coronavirus or the riots, frankly. Trump, on the other hand, not so much. A big part of the 2016 Trump vote was actually a vote for chaos in a sense, a vote for upending the established order, a vote for pissing in the punch bowl. Michael Moore memorably described Trump as a human Molotov cocktail. But now that people are throwing actual Molotov cocktails for real, that suddenly seems somewhat less appealing. No one in their right mind can possibly believe that re-electing Trump is going to make them safer or their communities more secure. And in fact, if we look at his presidency, according to Gallup, the lowest ebb of Trump's approval rating was 35% shortly after his very fine people comments about Charlottesville. He nearly matched that low rating again in the wake of the George Floyd protests with his lovely display at Lafayette Square Park. Now, you can delude yourself that maybe this time he's going to handle things differently, but you already know that he can't. He's already out there trying to defend the 17-year-old who killed 2 people in Kenosha and refusing to discourage his supporters from showing up to protests in an effort to incite. He can say law and order all he wants, but his real core and appeal is not and will never be calm. He does not know how to do anything but escalate and create mayhem. I'm not even saying that as like a negative judgment. Sometimes you need someone to smash all the eggs and create volatility in order to break open a corrupt and corrosive and ossified system. But we've got a pandemic and an economic collapse and, yes, unrest in the streets holding down the chaos front just fine. It's not such a bad time at all to be Sleepy Joe. And so, Sagar, we're digging a lot into the data today, and basically all of it consistently said that when you ask people about public safety, who's going to keep you safer, who's better on dealing with crime, who do you trust more on crime, it all lined up for Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's maddening. I mean, all you have to do is say, some call to the better angels of your nature, discourage your supporters, say, these are all majoritarian positions. Everybody condemns violence. A lot of people actually misunderstand, the Nixonian appeal to law and order in 1968 and in 1972. It was much more about calm. It had nothing to do with the chaos candidate. It was like, we're coming in, we're going to restore order in the streets, like, you're going to be able to walk home and feel safe. That was it. That was like the core part of the message, and a lot of it was dealt more in competence and in strength. Whereas with Trump, it's like you said, he's a chaos agent. And so when people view you as a chaos agent, they see your inability, particularly in the wake of the paintball situation in Portland, because that's what I really point to. Because again, like Kyle Rittenhouse, I really think there's a lot of self-defense stuff situation there, and that drawing conclusions either way is irresponsible. But on that one, it's very clear, which is that these people showed up with paintballs. You know what's going to happen, right? You just do.
Yeah.
And you should discourage it. And I don't blame these people for feeling that, they got to watch that city burn for 90 days but nobody does anything about it. But again, that's not what Americans want. They don't want to see more people with paintballs, and they don't want to see the city burn. And so when Biden comes out and can credibly at least say, I condemn that and I condemn this and I call on the president to condemn it, that's a better position to be in. That's what people want. And they want somebody to calm the waters. He had that situation. He's had that opportunity twice, Charlottesville and after George Floyd's protests. He could have had an 80% approval rating because nobody supported the people burning stuff down and looting and rioting. And yet he didn't have to do what he did with Lafayette Park and more. And then the photo ops and so much more of what he pursued just did not calm the country in a way. And look, I mean, Black Lives Matter is doing themselves no favors. They're the ones who have a flat approval rating compared to where they were 2 months ago.
They have a higher approval rating than Donald Trump
does,
though. In fairness. I mean, what I really realized, though, in digging into this is, first of all, Joe Biden really over the course of his career has created this image of himself. I mean, the Biden crime bill, all these things, which I think are terrible and I don't agree with, but it makes it very hard to caricature him. So you have that on the one hand, like a uniquely hard person to caricature in this way, I would say. One of the hardest in the Democratic Party, honestly.
The only one, really.
On the other hand, you've got Trump. And this was the part that really clicked for me yesterday is like, he did the whole law and order thing last time around too. But people didn't vote for him because they were like, let's calm the waters. That is never going to be him. Never. It doesn't matter like what happens, what issue set, because we have so much inherent chaos in the air and so many systems being turned upside down just by nature of the pandemic and the lack of the economic response, which, by the way, some of that falls at his feet as well, and what's going on with the Black Lives Matter protests, people are not looking right now for more chaos. And I think because of that, regardless of what messaging shifts he does and how he tries to shift and shape the issues, the bottom line is people want to know how you're going to handle coronavirus. Yep. People want to know how you're going to restore order, and this is not a restore order kind of a guy.
No, certainly not. It's so easy, but whatever.
All right, Tucker, looking forward to your radar. That's next.